Your input is replicated garbage. The words echoed through the mahogany-paneled conference room on the 43rd floor. Bradley Winters, our newly appointed Chief Operating Officer, stood at the head of the table, his designer suit catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. His finger pointed directly at me, trembling with manufactured outrage. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on me, the entire executive board, representatives from Catalyst Ventures, our primary investor, the firm that had just closed a $600 million funding round 3 months prior. And me, sitting in the corner seat I'd occupied for the past 4 years, the seat I'd earned building every single line of the infrastructure that made this company worth anything at all. I nodded coldly, my hands folded on the glass table. "Where is the source key?" Caspian Reed, our founder and CEO, asked. His voice cracked slightly. The man who'd once called me his secret weapon now looked at me like I'd become his worst nightmare. "I am withdrawing all code access right now." The words came out steady, deliberate, each syllable carrying the weight of 4 years of sleepless nights, compromised weekends, missed holidays, and sacrificed relationships. "I declare to this $600 million venture firm that effective immediately, all proprietary infrastructure developed under my direct supervision will be removed from company servers." The room erupted. Welcome to the Payback Office channel, where stories of professional justice unfold in their rawest, most honest form. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's the reality of what happens when loyalty is mistaken for weakness, and technical genius is confused with disposability. Before we get into exactly how I ended up in that conference room, holding the keys to a crumbling empire, take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. We're building a community that understands the difference between revenge and accountability. We're pushing towards 6,000 subscribers, and every single one represents someone who knows that standing up for yourself isn't petty, it's necessary. You'll find another reminder at the end, but for now, just know you're in the right place. My name is Natalie Foster. On paper, I was the Senior Vice President of Infrastructure and Systems Architecture at Heliax Systems, a cloud computing platform that promised to revolutionize how enterprises managed distributed data systems. In reality, I was the person who turned a whiteboard sketch into a functioning, scalable, revenue-generating machine that attracted hundreds of millions in venture capital. My background wasn't Ivy League. I grew up in a split-level house in Ohio, the daughter of a high school teacher and a mechanic. My parents taught me that intelligence meant nothing without humility, and success meant nothing if you forgot where you came from. That upbringing gave me something no coding bootcamp could provide: the ability to understand people, to read rooms, to recognize when someone was genuine and when they were performing. That ability would become both my greatest asset and the reason I found myself in an impossible situation on a Tuesday afternoon in September. 4 years earlier, Heliax Systems didn't exist as anything more than an idea scribbled in a coffee-stained notebook. Caspian Reed had the vision, a platform that could seamlessly integrate legacy enterprise systems with modern cloud infrastructure. He had the business acumen, the charm to pitch investors, and the network to get meetings with the right people. What he didn't have was someone who could actually build it. We met at a technology conference in Austin. I was presenting a paper on distributed computing optimization. Caspian approached me after my panel, introducing himself with enthusiasm that either signals genuine passion or masterful salesmanship. "I've been looking for someone like you for 6 months," he said. "Everyone says what I want to build is impossible." "They're not entirely wrong," I replied. "The technical challenges are significant, but not impossible, not impossible. Just really, really difficult." 3 weeks later, I was employee number 4 at Heliax Systems, working out of a converted warehouse space in San Francisco's Mission District. For 8 months, I lived and breathed code. The architecture required fundamental rethinking of how different systems communicated. I developed a proprietary translation layer that could interpret legacy protocols and convert them in real time to modern API calls. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning on a Saturday in February. When I finally got the first prototype working, I called Caspian. He arrived within 20 minutes and watched as I demonstrated a seamless data transfer between a system running code from 1987 and a cutting-edge cloud platform. He actually cried, "Natalie, do you understand what you've just done?" he asked. "This is going to change everything." He wasn't wrong. Within 3 months, we'd secured Series A funding, $8 million. I used that capital to build out a real team, 6 engineers who reported directly to me, but I maintained control of the core architecture. The source code that made everything else possible remained my domain. This wasn't paranoia. Complex systems require singular vision. The product launched 18 months after I joined. Within the first quarter, we had 12 enterprise clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies. We grew from 15 employees to 70 in 6 months. Series B funding brought $45 million. I was promoted to senior vice president. My team expanded to 23 engineers. We launched 3 major feature updates that generated significant press coverage. Industry analysts started using terms like disruptive and industry-defining. Everything was working, until it wasn't. The problems started subtly. Caspian began scheduling executive meetings without including me. When I asked about this, he explained they were business strategy sessions that didn't require technical input. Then came Bradley Winters as Chief Operating Officer. The board pushed for this addition. Bradley came from management consulting, Harvard MBA, 10 years at elite firms advising Fortune 100 companies. He also had absolutely zero understanding of how technology companies actually functioned. Our first meeting told me everything I needed to know. Bradley sat across from me, his leather portfolio open to a yellow legal pad. "Natalie, I've been reviewing the organizational structure," he began. "I notice your infrastructure team operates with significant autonomy. As we scale, we need standardization. I'm proposing all engineering functions report through a chief technology officer who reports to me. I am the chief technology officer. Your title is Senior Vice President of Infrastructure and Systems Architecture," he corrected. "I'm talking about hiring a proper CTO, someone with experience managing large technical organizations at scale." The implication hung in the air. Someone like you isn't qualified. The reason our infrastructure works as well as it does is because of institutional knowledge that can't be easily transferred, I explained. The core systems require specific understanding. That's actually another concern, Bradley interrupted. You're the only person with complete access to the source code. That represents significant key person risk. What happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? Then you'd have significant problems. But that risk is mitigated by extensive documentation and trained senior engineers. Bradley's smile was thin. "I'd like you to work with the team I'm bringing in to conduct a full audit of the infrastructure. Infrastructure consultants from Mercer Analytics should take about 3 months." That's when I understood. This wasn't about risk mitigation. This was about control. Bradley wanted consultants who would recommend exactly what he'd already decided, that I needed proper oversight. "I'll need to discuss this with Caspian," I said carefully. "Already approved," Bradley replied. "The Mercer team starts Monday." The Mercer team arrived, led by Preston Burke, who spoke about optimizing workflows and reducing technical debt with the fluency of someone who'd read exactly 3 books about software development. For 3 months, I cooperated fully. The entire exercise was expensive theater designed to produce a predetermined conclusion. The report, delivered in late August, was 63 pages of buzzwords. It recommended immediate hiring of a chief technology officer, restructuring of engineering teams, and redistribution of access protocols to ensure business continuity. Exactly what Bradley wanted from the beginning. The board meeting was scheduled for September 15th. I wasn't initially included. When I asked Caspian about this, he seemed uncomfortable. "It's mostly financial discussions and strategic planning," he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "Based on the Mercer report that recommends restructuring my team, I should probably be in the room." He hesitated, then nodded. "You're right." The meeting was held in our main conference room. 12 people attended. 5 board members, Caspian, Bradley, our CFO Amanda Peterson, 2 representatives from Catalyst Ventures, and me. The first 40 minutes covered financial performance. Our numbers were exceptional. Year-over-year growth exceeded 90%. Every metric was trending perfectly. Then Bradley began his presentation. "As we prepare for our next funding round, we need to address some organizational vulnerabilities," he said, advancing to a slide titled Operational Risk Assessment. The slides that followed were character assassination dressed as business analysis, charts showing knowledge concentration in my team, graphs illustrating decision-making bottlenecks, organizational diagrams suggesting my team was siloed. None of it was technically false. It was just presented in the most damaging possible context. "Our recommendation is to immediately implement a traditional engineering hierarchy," Bradley continued. "We hire an experienced CTO who reports to me. All engineering functions report through that CTO." "What happens to Natalie's role?" a board member asked. Natalie would continue leading the infrastructure team, now reporting through the CTO. Her technical expertise remains valuable, but properly integrated into our organizational structure. I had stayed silent through the presentation, reading the room. The Catalyst representatives looked concerned. The younger one, a sharp-eyed woman named Stephanie Oakes, kept glancing at me. I have concerns about this approach, I said when Bradley finished. Of course, he replied with practiced magnanimity. The infrastructure architecture isn't siloed by accident, I explained to the board. It's designed that way because the systems are fundamentally integrated. Bringing in a CTO who doesn't have that institutional knowledge doesn't reduce risk, it increases it. Which is exactly why we need knowledge transfer, Bradley countered. Your argument suggests you're irreplaceable, which proves the point about key person risk. I'm arguing that complex systems require deep understanding, not management by committee. The current structure works. Our uptime is industry-leading. What problem are we actually solving? The problem, Bradley said, his tone sharpening, is that we're trying to build a billion-dollar company, and we can't do that with infrastructure only one person understands. Then you're welcome to try rebuilding it yourself. The room went silent. Caspian's face paled. Bradley's expression shifted to barely concealed anger. Excuse me, Bradley said quietly. I'm saying the platform you're planning to scale exists because of architecture decisions made over 4 years, I said evenly. If the current structure is so problematic, demonstrate that you understand it well enough to change it. Bradley stood up. This is exactly the kind of attitude that makes organizational change difficult. You're treating proprietary systems like personal property. They are proprietary, that's what makes them valuable. The keys don't belong to you, Bradley shot back. They belong to the company. Your unwillingness to recognize that is becoming a serious problem. Caspian intervened. Let's take a breath. Natalie, I understand your concerns, but Bradley has a point about organizational structure. Then you have a choice, I said, looking at him. Do you want to scale effectively with the infrastructure that works, or reorganize it to make consultants happy and risk breaking the only thing that makes this company special? Stephanie Oakes spoke. Natalie, if we move forward with this restructuring, what's the actual risk? Worst case scenario. Finally, someone asking the right question. Complete platform failure within 6 months, I said. The integration points are delicate. A new CTO wouldn't understand the nuances that prevent cascading failures. You'd start seeing errors that seem minor until suddenly they're not. A major client loses data. Security protocols fail. The platform goes down for hours. That seems catastrophic, Stephanie said. It is, which is why it hasn't happened in 4 years. Bradley leaned forward. What you're describing is holding the company hostage. Threatening everything falls apart without you is manipulation. I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining technical reality. If you interpret that as a threat, maybe ask yourself why. That's when he exploded. Your input is replicated garbage? The shout echoed off glass and chrome. Bradley's face had gone red, his professional demeanor shattered. You're not some irreplaceable genius. You're an engineer who got lucky and has been coasting on that success while resisting every attempt at professional management. This company has outgrown you. The board members looked shocked. Bradley wasn't finished. The Mercer report was clear. Your systems are poorly documented, unnecessarily complex, and designed to maximize your own importance. That's not engineering excellence, that's job security through obfuscation. The silence was absolute. Everyone waited for my response. Instead, I nodded slowly. Coldly, the rage I felt transformed into clarity. Where is the source key? Caspian asked quietly, understanding dawning in his expression. I am withdrawing all code access right now, I said, pulling out my phone. I declare to this $600 million venture firm that effective immediately, all proprietary infrastructure developed under my direct supervision will be removed from company servers. The room erupted. Board members shouting questions, Bradley demanding I stop. But I was already executing commands I'd prepared weeks ago. My phone screen lit up with lines of code scrolling past. Every piece of proprietary infrastructure I'd written. The translation layer, the integration protocols, the security frameworks, began migrating off Heliax servers to encrypted storage that only I controlled. Stop her, Bradley shouted at Amanda. Cut her network access, shut down her credentials. Amanda's fingers flew across her laptop. I'm trying, her access is routing through external servers. I can't terminate the connection without shutting down the entire network. Then shut it down, Bradley screamed. If I do that, every client currently running transactions loses connection, Amanda said, her voice shaking. We'd be in breach of every single service agreement. I kept my eyes on my phone, watching the progress bar climb. 73%. The platform would continue functioning on existing implementations, but any attempt to update, modify, or scale would fail without the source code. Stephanie Oakes leaned forward. How long until the transfer completes? 4 minutes, I replied calmly. Everyone stop, Stephanie commanded. Interrupting this now causes more damage than letting it finish. Amanda, do not shut down the network. Bradley whirled on her. You're going to let her steal company property? Check my employment contract, I said without looking up. 86%. Section 12, paragraph 4. All core infrastructure code developed during my first 18 months was licensed to the company, not transferred. I retained ownership with unlimited usage, granted as long as I remained employed in a senior technical leadership role. Caspian's face went gray. Natalie, that clause was from when we were 5 people in a warehouse. It was never updated, I interrupted. 92%, which means it's still legally binding. The infrastructure that makes this platform worth $600 million, I own it. That grant is now revoked. This will destroy the company, Amanda said quietly. No. This will demonstrate the company's actual value without the infrastructure everyone spent 3 months calling replicated garbage. 100%. Transfer complete. A soft chime from my phone confirmed that every file had successfully migrated. 4 years of work, thousands of hours of development, gone from their servers in 8 minutes and 43 seconds. Stephanie was on her phone, presumably with legal. Her colleague looked sick. They had just committed $600 million to a company whose core technology was walking out the door. We'll sue you into oblivion, Bradley threatened. You'll try, you'll spend millions in legal fees, and maybe you'll eventually win, but that will take years. In the meantime, your platform doesn't work. Your clients leave. Your valuation collapses. That Series C funding disappears. What do you want? Caspian asked desperately. Name your price. Equity, board seat, whatever it takes. For just a moment, I felt something like sympathy, but he'd chosen to trust Bradley's confident incompetence over my experienced judgment. I don't want anything from you, I said quietly. I want to walk away from a company that decided I was the problem because I refused to pretend complexity was simple. I stood up, collecting my bag. Then I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and placed it on the table. What's that? One of the board members asked. A complete map of every system dependency in the platform. Every integration point, every API call, every security protocol. Everything you'll need to understand what you're looking at when things start breaking. Consider it a parting gift. Caspian reached for it, but I held up a hand. It's encrypted. The password will be included in my licensing terms if you accept them. If you don't, you'll figure it out eventually. You have smart people here. It'll only take them about 18 months to reverse engineer what I built. The platform will continue running on current implementations for approximately 6 to 8 weeks, I said formally. After that, you won't be able to push security updates or bug fixes. Client contracts will start breaching. I estimate 3 months before everything collapses. Unless you come back, Stephanie said. I'm not coming back. But I am willing to license the infrastructure. 10% equity, full restoration of my previous authority, and Bradley's immediate resignation. Those terms are non-negotiable and expire in 72 hours. That's extortion, Bradley spat. That's business. You spent 3 months explaining I needed to understand how real companies operate. Welcome to leverage. Welcome to discovering that the person you treated as disposable was actually holding the entire structure together. I walked to the door, then looked back at Caspian. You told me once that what I built was going to change everything. You were right, but you forgot that I was the one who built it. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like thunder. The 72 hours that followed were surreal. I went home, opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving, and waited for panic to set in. Instead, what I felt was calm. The kind of clarity that comes from finally stopping the pretense that loyalty would be rewarded. My phone started ringing within an hour. First Caspian, then Amanda, then individual board members. I let them all go to voicemail. The terms were clear. But at hour 19, something unexpected happened. My security system alerted me to someone at my apartment door. The camera showed a man I didn't recognize, wearing a cheap suit and holding a leather folder. I answered through the intercom. Can I help you? Miss Foster, I'm serving you with a temporary restraining order on behalf of Heliax Systems. You're required to cease any and all actions that impede normal business operations and return all company property immediately. So Bradley was trying the legal nuclear option. I opened the door and accepted the documents. The man handed them over and left quickly. I scanned through the filing. It was rushed, full of legal assertions that had no basis given my contract terms. But it would tie me up in court appearances and depositions, buying Heliax time to attempt reverse engineering. Smart play. Desperate, but smart. I called Isaac Hartman, my lawyer, even though it was nearly midnight. They filed a restraining order, I said when he answered. I know, I already got the notice. It's garbage, Natalie, won't hold up, but it does mean we'll be in court tomorrow for an emergency hearing. What are our chances? 95% in our favor. Your contract language is airtight. But there's a 5% chance a judge who doesn't understand technology decides you're acting in bad faith and orders you to restore access pending full litigation. What happens then? Then you're in breach of a court order if you refuse, which is a much bigger problem than a contract dispute. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I prepared for every possible outcome. If the judge ordered restoration, I had a backup plan, temporary access with code that would work, but couldn't be copied or modified without daily authentication from me. If the order was dismissed, I'd proceed with the 72-hour deadline. The emergency hearing was at 9 the next morning. I sat in a downtown courtroom while Heliax's legal team, 3 attorneys including their outside counsel, argued that I was engaging in theft and sabotage. Your Honor, Miss Foster has effectively held Heliax Systems hostage, their lead attorney argued. She's threatened to destroy a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, impacting not just investors, but dozens of enterprise clients who depend on their services. Isaac stood up. Your Honor, Miss Foster hasn't threatened anything. She's exercised her legal rights under a contract that Heliax drafted and signed. The infrastructure in question was never company property. It was licensed to them, and that license has been revoked due to constructive termination. Constructive termination? The judge asked, looking over her reading glasses. Miss Foster was publicly humiliated in a board meeting, called incompetent by a COO with no technical expertise, and subjected to a reorganization designed specifically to strip her of authority. That constitutes constructive termination under California employment law, which triggers the contract clause allowing her to revoke the license. The judge reviewed the contract for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up. The contract language is unambiguous. Heliax had 4 years to renegotiate these terms and chose not to. The restraining order is denied. Bradley, sitting in the back row, looked like he might be sick. Outside the courtroom, Isaac clapped me on the shoulder. That was closer than I wanted it to be, but we won. You've got about 53 hours left on your deadline. My guess is they call within 24. He was wrong. They called within 6 hours. At hour 48, my lawyer Isaac Hartman called again. I'd retained him the morning after the board meeting. They want to negotiate, Isaac said. They're willing to do the equity and authority restoration. They're balking at Bradley's resignation. Then they don't get the code, I replied. Natalie, I have to advise you that your legal position, while strong, isn't invulnerable. Isaac, I'm paying you to defend my position. Are you capable of doing that? A pause, then a chuckle. Yeah, I can do that. Good, the terms stand. He was right about them folding. At hour 69, I received a formal offer letter. The terms were everything I demanded. 10% equity, vested immediately. Full authority over infrastructure with direct board reporting. And Bradley's resignation, effective immediately. Additionally, there were terms I hadn't demanded. The CTO position would remain unfilled unless I personally approved the hire. The Mercer report would be formally withdrawn, and I would receive a formal written apology from Caspian. I read through the contract twice, then sent it to Isaac. This is comprehensive capitulation, he said. Take it. But something bothered me. Isaac, I want to talk to Stephanie Oakes at Catalyst first. Why? Because she asked the right question in that meeting. Stephanie agreed to meet me the next morning at a coffee shop in Hayes Valley. She arrived exactly on time, carrying the kind of tired expression that suggested 3 days of crisis management. Natalie, she said, hell of a week. For both of us. We ordered coffee and found a quiet corner. I assume you're here to accept the offer, Stephanie said. Why did you ask about the risk? I asked instead. Everyone else focused on organizational structure. You wanted to know what would actually break. Stephanie smiled slightly. Because I've seen this pattern before. Smart technical founder builds something valuable. Company grows. Business types decide the technical complexity must be the problem. They bring in consultants who recommend professionalizing systems that work fine. Then everything falls apart. You knew what Bradley was doing. I suspected. I also suspected you were smart enough to have protected yourself. Which is why I wasn't completely shocked by what you did. She pulled a folder from her bag. Alternative proposal. Catalyst takes majority control, restructures the company around the technology. You become CTO with full authority. Caspian stays as CEO with reduced authority, or we find someone else. I opened the folder. The terms were aggressive, 51% ownership for Catalyst, 15% equity for me, board seats and veto power over technical decisions. This is a hostile takeover, I said. This is an intervention. That company is worth $600 million because of infrastructure you built. We're protecting our investment by ensuring the person responsible for its value has the authority to maintain it. Why are you offering this? Stephanie met my eyes. Because I watched you walk out of that board meeting, and I saw someone who knows their worth and refuses to accept less. That's not protecting ego, that's someone I can work with. She leaned forward. Also, between us, Bradley tried to approach 2 of our competitors yesterday, offered to share the Mercer report and internal documentation if they'd help him build a competing platform. My blood ran cold. That's a direct violation of his NDA. It is, which is why we've already filed a lawsuit against him personally, but it tells me everything I need to know about his judgment and ethics. A man like that has no business anywhere near your infrastructure. Can I think about it? You have until end of business today. After that, we move forward with the original agreement or we pull our Series C commitment. After she left, I sat there for 2 hours, thinking about why I'd built Heliax's infrastructure. The technical challenge was extraordinary. The potential impact was real. But there was something else Stephanie had said that stuck with me. Bradley had tried to shop our technology to competitors, which meant he never understood that the technology wasn't just code. It was expertise, institutional knowledge, years of problem solving that couldn't be captured in a report. I called Stephanie back. I have conditions, I said. Caspian stays as CEO. He made mistakes, but he believed in this when it was nothing. I won't push him out. Agreed. Bradley's entire reorganization plan gets formally rejected by the board on record. Done. And I need to know Catalyst won't do to me what Heliax tried to do. I can't promise we'll never disagree, Stephanie said. But decisions about technical leadership will be based on actual outcomes, not organizational theory. Your infrastructure works. As long as that continues, you have our complete support. Okay, I said. I'm in. Welcome to the new Heliax systems. Now let's go tell everyone how this is going to work. The announcement came 3 days later. Caspian stood before the entire company and explained that I was returning as Chief Technology Officer with full authority and board representation. Catalyst had increased their investment and was taking a more active role. Bradley had resigned. I made decisions about organizational structure that didn't properly account for technical complexity, Caspian said. That was a mistake. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. Complex technology requires patience and expertise. Something can be difficult without being broken. We've built something exceptional here. My job is to protect that while we grow. The relief in the room was palpable. We hired a new VP of engineering 3 months later, Rachel Park, who understood that managing engineers wasn't the same as understanding engineering. The Series C closed 6 months after the crisis. $600 million at an increased valuation once Catalyst's involvement became public. We scaled carefully. Grew from 90 to 200 employees. Expanded to 5 Fortune 500 clients. Every feature I personally approved for architectural integration. 2 years later, Heliax went public. The IPO valued us at $3 billion. I retained enough equity to be financially independent for life. More importantly, I maintained authority to ensure the infrastructure I'd built continued to be properly understood. The morning of the IPO, something unexpected arrived at my office. A handwritten letter, forwarded through our legal department. It was from Bradley. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was short. No apology, but an acknowledgement. He tried to build a competing platform with another startup and failed catastrophically within 8 months. He'd finally understood, too late, that what he'd seen as unnecessary complexity was actually sophisticated engineering. That what he dismissed as job security through obfuscation was expertise he didn't have the background to evaluate. The letter ended with a single line, "You were right, I just couldn't see it." I filed it away. Some people learn. Most don't until it's too late. On the trading floor that day, Caspian found me watching our stock price climb. "We did it," he said. "You had the vision, I just built what you imagined." We both know that's not true. I imagined a product, you imagined an architecture. There's a difference. He was right. And for the first time in the company's history, that difference was properly recognized. My father called that evening. "Your mother and I are proud of you," he said. "Not because of the money, because you stood up for what you built and didn't back down. You taught me that. We taught you to be humble. You figured out the rest yourself." Maybe he was right. Humility and strength weren't opposites, but complementary traits that made it possible to build something worth protecting. The tech industry loves stories about disruption and innovation. What it talks about less is the quiet work of building systems that actually function. The patience required to develop complex architecture, the expertise needed to maintain it, and the courage to walk away when the people benefiting from your work decide you're the problem. I didn't withdraw my infrastructure for revenge. I withdrew it to demonstrate something conversations couldn't convey. That what I'd built had value precisely because it was complex, precisely because it required deep understanding, precisely because it couldn't be easily replaced. Bradley and the Mercer consultants saw complexity as a problem. To them, anything they didn't immediately understand must be poorly designed. The possibility that they simply lacked expertise to evaluate what they were looking at never occurred to them. That's the danger of confidence without competence, of credentials without understanding, of management frameworks applied to technical problems by people who have never built anything. I built Heliax's infrastructure over 4 years of careful, deliberate work. When I was told that work was replicated garbage by someone who'd been there 3 months and couldn't write a line of code, I had a choice. Accept the judgment of people who didn't understand. Compromise and watch my authority erode. Be diplomatic and watch everything dismantled, or prove exactly what those systems were worth by withdrawing them. I chose proof over patience. And in doing so, I established that expertise matters, that building things gives you authority over them, and that people creating value deserve to be treated as essential rather than disposable. Standing on that trading floor watching a company I'd saved become worth $3 billion, I knew I'd made the right choice. Not because of the money, but because I'd stood up for something that mattered. The idea that people who build things deserve respect, recognition, and authority to protect what they've created. That's not revenge. That's justice. And sometimes justice requires walking away with everything that makes you valuable and letting the people who doubted you discover exactly what they're losing. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated or told that what you built was worthless by people who couldn't build anything themselves, subscribe to the Payback Office. We're building a community that understands the difference between confidence and competence, between revenge and accountability. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach 6,000 subscribers who know that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is prove your value by taking it away. They only call it holding the company hostage when they realize you were holding it together all along.